Hi there, it's CEPA fellow Carrie Oderman. Welcome to the CEPA Podcast, where we bring together leaders and experts from both sides of the Atlantic to explore the biggest challenges shaping our world today. We hope you enjoy the episode.
I'm Dr. Alina Polyakova, President and CEO of the Center for European Policy Analysis. Welcome again to the CEPA Podcast, where we bring together leaders and experts from both sides of the Atlantic to explore the biggest challenges shaping our world today. And I can't think of anyone better to have a thoughtful, insightful conversation about how we connect U.S. domestic issues of foreign policy, international affairs, than Congressman Jim Costa, who represents California's 21st Congressional District. Congressman Costa, you've been a leader in advancing U.S. foreign policy, as well as agriculture, energy security, and you now have brought decades of experience and bipartisanship to the House of Representatives. It's so wonderful to have you with us. Welcome to the CEPA Podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Doctor. If I may call you Alina, you can call me Jim. And we have had an opportunity to work together, especially over the last year or so. And I value the good work that you and your team with CEPA are engaged in, because it's so important during these trying times that we're living in, both sides of the Atlantic, and as it relates specifically to the challenges that the brave people of Ukraine have demonstrated day in and day out since Russia invaded them on February 22nd. And CEPA plays, I think, a very important role on a bipartisan basis in reaching out to further encourage and educate and foster the sort of bipartisan cooperation that we need here in Washington, D.C., to work with our European allies in support of Ukraine. And so I wanted, by way, to give you and CEPA a shout out, because I appreciate the good work you do. And obviously we must continue because the challenges are great. And we know that the adversary and Vladimir Putin is one that threatens the very existence. This is existential. This is the very existence of the sovereignty of the country of Ukraine and its democracy. And he has been outspoken in his views of that, does not view Ukraine really as a country, although he feels similarly with other Eastern European countries, and really wants to recreate, I believe, the old Soviet Union, and maybe he views himself some sort of recreation of Peter the Great, which he's not. He's a war criminal who, is a mob boss of a country that's masquerading as a country, but that's what modern day Russia is. It's a syndicate masquerading as a country with a mob boss called Putin, who bombs hospitals, bombs schools, kidnaps thousands and thousands of Ukrainian children to his goal, which is to assimilate the Ukrainian people and its country as a part of Russia today, and that's simply unacceptable.
So, Congressman Jim, you already started to lay out, I think, the important conversation that we wanted to have with you today. But, I wanted to maybe start off, before we get into the details of everything you just described with, I agree with everything you said 100%. Your description of Russia today, very true and deeply unfortunate. And the kinds of threats that Putin presents, not just to Ukraine directly, but to Europe and to the United States, is profound. But I was reading a bit more about you ahead of this conversation, and I was really struck by your personal background, and I also realized that this year, 2025, marks your 20th year serving as a member of the House, the U.S. Representatives, because you were elected in 2004, but you started
Yes.
serving in 2005. So it's 20 years this year, and it's also CEPA's 20th birthday this year. So we both have things to celebrate, and congratulations on 2 decades of service, and thank you for your public service to our country. But
Thank you.
it's a pleasure to have a chance to speak with you because I read in your background that your family actually came to the United States from Portugal 2 generations ago, as your grandparents, and they started out as farmers working on dairy farms. And you are now a 3rd generation farmer, now farming almonds, if I'm not mistaken.
And for the day is all I ask.
Very nice.
But to sell the almonds.
And so, given your deep roots, now generational roots in California, in the farming industry in particular, and all of your years of experience, not just in the U.S. Congress, but in the state legislature before that, where you were elected to at the very old age of 26, which is pretty incredible, and really inspiring that you began your service at such a young age. And just taking us from those beginnings to how you think about the world today and how you think about your role now as a veteran policymaker. How do those roots, inform you? Either your family roots from Europe, your own background, living in California, and as a 3rd generation farming family. How does that inform your views about the world, the ones that you just started to describe at the beginning?
Well, thank you, Alina, for that question. I think that all of us, base our outlook and our goals and our passions based upon a lot of our origins, because we all have a story. You and your family have a story. I always love hearing about people's stories because it tells me about who they are. And my grandparents came here like a lot of immigrant families with a deep desire to have a better life for themselves and for their children. And the fact is that there are a lot of reasons why this experiment that next year will be 250 years of a democracy, that the United States, as President Ronald Reagan once said, a city of light on a shining hill, reflected such a positive image for all around the world who hope to, have a better way of life than from where they were. And my grandparents were no different than that. And I often believe that I tell groups that part of the secret sauce of America, I think, is the story of immigrants past and immigrants present. That's the American story, I think. It's our secret sauce, to coin a phrase. And that was certainly from the time as a young kid, listening to my grandparents and my parents talk about the old country, and, when you're, 4 or 5 years old and they say the old country, thinking, okay, what's that mean? And then developing these images and hearing the stories from my grandparents as they came as young people, not knowing where they were going. I mean, they had a dream about it, of course, but it wasn't like today where you'd have your iPhone and you would, Google up, Fresno, California. And so much of what they took was on faith and hope. And you think about it, and I think about the people in Ukraine and other places in the world where there are tremendous challenges. They're risk takers. And sometimes they say risk taking skips a generation. I don't know if that's true or not. But risk takers are the people we read of in terms of history. And I'm a student of not only American history, but of world history. And so I think too often I lament that we don't teach history that well in America anymore. It seems that way anyway. And I think it's important that we know not only our nation's history, but world history, and we know our own family's history. And so when I have visited Ukraine over the last 3+ years, I think of, my grandparents trying to find a better life for themselves. And I think of, the importance of understanding what it takes for a risk taker to be able to be successful. And so, that's all by way of my background. I mean, I would have never thought that I would be in Congress, as you noted, for this length of time. By the way, I always tell folks, I was the youngest person ever elected to the state legislature at the time, but I say I was 15, not, but it really came from the fact that my parents, as first-generation Americans, thought that besides, as they became successful in their farming, that they needed in this country to give back, they needed to be involved, that democracy works better when it's participatory. We know that.
Yep.
So when you look for the participation among the citizens in Ukraine, you look at the participatory level here in our own country. And so my parents, felt that they needed to do their part, and they got engaged at a local level. And it was my mother who, this is typical immigrants, and I think relates to it. My father had to quit school in the 6th grade because his parents thought they were illiterate and non-English speaking, that must be a pretty good education. You can read, you can write, you can do simple math, but it was certainly more than they had. And they needed them to work. They needed the kids to work to try to save up enough money to buy a small dairy. My mother went to school in the 5th grade, big families, which are typical of immigrant families. Her father had been injured in an agricultural accident, and she was a freshman in high school. And she had quit school to help her mother raise her 7 other siblings. And my mother was very unhappy. She liked school, and she wanted to stay, but she was not able to. So it wasn't like my, father went to UCLA and my mother went to Stanford. I mean, there was no history like that in our family. My sister, who's older than me, was the first to actually go to university. But Mom heard about this internship program in Washington, D.C. when I was on to my senior year at Fresno State. She says, "Jim, why don't you look into this?" And I did, and it worked out, and I got this internship. And I'm really very big on encouraging university students to look at internships, because I think they're very helpful for them. And I came to Washington for the first time at 21 years of age. And I mean, all the history I had studied, it was here, and I could see it in the museums and places where major battles had taken place, whether it would be where Cornwallis surrendered to George Washington, whether it be Gettysburg, or all these things I read about, and you could visit them, and all of a sudden it became real. To visit Ford's Theater, where sadly President Lincoln had been assassinated. And so after 8 weeks, I really came back home with a desire to get more involved.
Yeah.
And I think internships provide that ability and that good fortune. And so I don't know if I really kind of answered your question, but the combination of experiences that I had that motivated me. And then one other thing, we may want to focus on healthcare, maybe be a physician or a nurse, or we may want to focus on business or, agriculture or in law. I mean, whatever fields interest us young people. But I mean, I think it's important that in a democracy, that we do not have a sense of entitlement, but rather we have a sense of, we have some success, that we give back, and we offer, others the same opportunities that maybe we were able to enjoy. I mean, I think about it when I walk up to the steps of the Capitol, and you have a rough day after 10 hours or 12 hours, and you walk out. And I mean, when I worked 10 or 12 hours on our family's farm, I could look back and know what I got done. Some days I walk down the steps and I wonder, what did I actually get done? But then I think that there's, in 249 years, the history of our country, a little over 12,000 people that have served in the House of Representatives, and how honored and privileged I have been to be able to have this opportunity to serve as a member of the House of Representatives and help people. That's my passion.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of, I don't know if I kind of explained, but, when I show people where presidents take their oath of office and are sworn in as they raise their right hand, and the various speeches that presidents have given as to what their administration is going to be about. I think back, I was a little kid, but John F. Kennedy in 1961, talking about the torch being passed on to a new generation of Americans born in this century. Eisenhower was born in the 19th century, tested by war and tempered by time. And he said in the close of his speech, "So I ask my fellow Americans, not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Right.
We together as Americans can do to make America a better country and make this world a better place that we live in." I wonder if any American president could challenge the citizens in that way today. I mean, you think about it, it's not about you, it's not about me, but it's about all of us. And I think that's the spirit that I do this job in, and that's the passion that I share for the people of Ukraine and our allies that share the same values on human rights, on the freedoms that we cherish, and to create institutions that promote those freedoms that we cherish and protect them, so that we can ensure that the human rights that we all value are a reality for the people we love and for the world we live in.
So Jim, thank you for that. That was beautiful. You started to talk about Ukraine and making some connections between your life experience and what you've seen in Ukraine. I know you have many Ukrainian friends now. You met with President Zelensky. I know you last year even received an honorary diploma from Ukraine's parliament, the Verkhovna Rada, and you've become very well known in the U.S. House now for being one of the more avid supporters of Ukraine, certainly since the full-scale invasion in February 2022. But I actually wanted to maybe shift a little bit off script here, because I thought it was really interesting how you talked about the importance of democratic institutions and participatory democracy. And of course, the United States is about to be a 250-year-old democracy, as you said, and Ukraine's a very young democracy. And not only is it a young democracy, it's also a country that, of course, is fighting for its existence with a brutal force led by, Vladimir Putin. At some point, of course, all of us hope that the conflict and the war will end, and it will end with Ukraine's victory. But I think the bigger challenges will also start then, right? In terms of how can and will Ukrainians maintain their own democracy in a post-conflict environment? If you think back about your own family's history, about your own participation in our democratic process, And I know you do this a lot when you talk to fellow parliamentarians in other countries, in Europe, as well as Ukraine. What advice would you give some of these young people? Because so many in Ukraine's parliament are a young generation. They're energetic. They are very invested in their democracy. Of course, it's very hard right now because all the focus is on defending their country. But what advice would you give them? You know, that you know U.S. history very well. We've gone through our own wars, certainly the war for independence being the key one. I think in some ways this is what Ukraine is going through now in a very different way, where they're fighting for their right to be an independent country and a country that has the ability to determine its future by the will of the people. And very, very similar story in some ways to America, I think. And I hadn't thought about that until I heard you talking. So, you know, when you're often, I'm sure, asked for advice by Ukrainian parliamentarians, what do you tell them?
Well, I tell them first that um, I can't imagine in some ways how hard it is for them to be able to do their jobs, to create the sort of trust, because democracy, to a large degree, depends upon trust with the people. That in fact they will create the kind of conditions and opportunities that make people want to support and defend their country and their democracy. And I've read a lot about, you know, not only our own history, but, you know, you think about a time that was not that far off that is well documented. And I'm talking about the events leading up to World War II in the 1930s, and then the actual war itself, and how these European countries reacted toward the populist movement that led to fascism, that led to these dictatorships that created so much damage throughout the world. And so that's why another reason why I think history is important, because, you know, there are lessons to be learned from history. So I share that with my colleagues in the RADA. I share that with those individuals who are part of President Zelensky's government, and with so many members of the brave military who I meet regularly as of today, that care so passionately about their country. When you think of the loss of lives and the injuries, two of the members of the military that came in here today, you know, and that come in other days, that, you know, that, I mean, it's a constant visit, because as you know, that I do have a reputation in the Congress as being a large supporter of Ukraine. And so, you know, it's, I mean, I understand why they come to visit me, but it over the last several years, it's so meaningful to me. I mean, because I want to say thank you to them. And as this is evolving into the third year of this conflict, it reminds us that the reason that Ukraine has done so well is because of its people willing to stand up for their country. And we had classified briefings before the invasion and afterwards about what the will of the people would be. And I believe that when this is settled and we have a victory for the people of Ukraine and we have a peace, that when the history is written, it will be to a large degree about overestimates and underestimates. There was an overestimate, I think, generally of Russia's ability and the power of their military, and their ability then, therefore, to to convey their will upon the Ukrainian people.
Yeah.
There was an underestimation as to how much the people of Ukraine cared about their country, how much they were willing to stand up for their country and fight for their democracy. And clearly, that has been demonstrated time and time again through the difficult days over the last now 3+ years. And the resiliency of the people of Ukraine, I find absolutely inspirational, heartening, and a motivator for me to do more and to encourage my colleagues to do more.
So can I just ask a follow-up question then? For so many Americans who have supported Ukraine, we've had overwhelming support for Ukraine in this country. Everybody gets tired of war. And most Americans, even if they may support Ukraine for all the reasons you just mentioned, but they never really get the chance to go to Ukraine. They don't get the chance to meet people from there who are so courageous and protecting their own country, like as you just described. And I'm sure you talk to a lot of folks like that in your own district and in California. What do you tell them as to why Ukraine matters?
I tell them Ukraine matters because if we value our own democracy, we need to understand that the freedoms that we value, that we cherish, and the country that we built should never, ever be taken for granted. Too oftentimes, I think young people especially think that, oh, gee, this didn't happen by accident. This happened in our country because people of goodwill came together from different parts of the world and different parts of life, and they shared their common values. And America has withstood the test of time because we've had friends and we've had allies. And post-World War II, we've created, many people like to say that the greatest nation in the world, and I think they are certainly testament to that fact, and the exceptionalism, which is an interesting term, exceptionalism of America. But I think that's, if there is, it's because of its people, and it's because of its resiliency. I was during that very painful day on January 6th in 2021 when an angry mob attempted to, broke into the Capitol is what they did, to overthrow a fair and free election. I was one of about 25 members trapped in the House gallery for 40 minutes. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I heard tear gas going off, and you think, this is really surreal. This doesn't happen in America. This may happen in some developing country, in some far off place that you see, on newsreels, but it doesn't happen in America. And the longer I was there, I began to think, as resilient as we have been for 249 years, through war, through depressions, and how we like to think that we're very strong, and we are, but how fragile democracy can be if you take it for granted. And that's what I thought of that January 6th day that I was trapped in the Capitol by this violent mob attempting to overthrow an election here in America, of all places. And so I think of the people of Ukraine who are trying to bound together in a young democracy that doesn't have nearly the experience and the years of coming together as a nation. And I think how brave and how inspirational that they believe fighting for their country is worthwhile. and that they believe that they're at the front lines of a dark, adversarial country that doesn't believe in their right to exist, and furthermore doesn't believe in their neighbor's right to exist, whether that be Poland or Romania or Baltic states. That these brave Eastern European countries is where you find the strongest resolve today in wanting to be a part of the European Union and wanting to be a part of NATO, because they're looking west, they're looking forward, and they're looking to the future. And those are the examples that they want to follow. And certainly they have work to do, and they have, issues with corruption, and they have other issues that they have to do to make sure that their democracy is strong and healthy. And that's not easy when you're fighting for your existence.
Yeah. So thank you for that. We could talk for a long time, but we're running out of time, which means
continue to talk. I love this podcast. This is great.
Yeah, it's fun.
How long have you been doing?
A little bit, but we still have a quick lightning round of questions for you.
Okay.
All right. But before we get there, I have to ask you, are you a sports fan broadly?
Yes, I'm a sports fan broadly. And
so this is all going to make sense why I asked you that. Okay,
and I've got a sense of humor too, because I take my work seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. I think you got to have a sense of humor.
So these are going to be pretty controversial questions. I'm just warning you right now. You ready? Okay. Here we go. Carl's Jr. or In-N-Out?
In-N-Out.
Okay. You have a choice. You drive on Route 1 or Interstate 5?
Well, it depends. My preference is Route 1 along the beautiful Pacific coast. And of course, there's also a similar one on the East Coast. But when I have time to go places, you go up around Big Sur and you go down towards Santa Barbara and the beautiful Pacific Ocean, and you see those vineyards in the Central Coast, and then you go past San Francisco up toward Mendocino and toward the Oregon border, and I love California, and it's a beautiful state, and I like to share it with people. So you're going to have to come out, and of course, you went to school there for a while, didn't you?
That's right. Eight years in the Bay Area, so I know Route 1 very well.
Maybe 5 if I'm in a hurry, but 1 is my preference.
Okay, noted. All right, couple more. Sequoia National Park or Sierra National Forest?
Well, I spend more of my time in the Sierra National Forest. There's a favorite lake of mine, Huntington Lake, that is an alpine saline lake, one of the best saline lakes in the West Coast. It has constant winds and regattas between June and September. I'd love to take you up there sometime. I have my sailboat there. And but Kings Canyon Sequoia National Park is one of the crown jewels of our park system, along with Yosemite National Park. And I love to take friends up there and people who are visiting for the first time and show them off, because the mountains, I think, are inspirational.
They are. I've been to both. It's hard to choose. Okay, now we get to the sports lightning round, and in California it gets tricky. It's a lot of teams. Okay.
Yes.
Starting with footballs. Okay. Chargers, Rams, 49ers.
Oh, that's not close. The 49ers.
Okay. Okay, then we go to baseball.
Okay.
So many. Angels, Athletics, Dodgers, Giants, or Padres?
There's a dividing line in California between Fresno and Bakersfield. And if you're, Fresno North, you tend to associate with the Bay Area teams. And certainly the San Francisco Giants. I thought I'd never live long enough for them to win a World Series. And then in 5 years, they won 3 World Series in that time. And it put all happy smiles on our faces who were Giant fans.
They're an amazing team, actually, now.
Yeah.
Okay. One more, and that's basketball. Clippers, Kings, Lakers, Warriors.
Oh, Stephen Curry. I mean, he's a magician, what he can do with the ball. And, the, well, in total candidness, a good friend of mine was the defensive coach for the Warriors, the Golden State Warriors. And so I've gotten a chance to go to games and meet some of these individuals who, inspire. People need to be inspired. We all need to be inspired, and so I get inspired by my constituents, but I also get inspired by people who have challenges and are able to succeed, notwithstanding those challenges that they have. Everybody, as I say, has a story. You have a story. I have a story, and people listening to your podcast have stories, and they want to know, how does this person relate to me, and why does that mean something for my life, something that is a takeaway.
Yeah. All right. So now we know all of your allegiances and all the games that you'll take people to when they come out to California. Also a Giants fan. I can't help but having lived in California in the Bay Area for 8 years. But Jim, Congressman Costa, it was great to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time. It was really inspiring to learn more about your family and your experience in your life, and why now you are such a supporter of Ukraine. And it's really meaningful to those of us who work on this, and also hope for Ukraine's victory over authoritarianism. So thank you for your time again. And thank you for joining the CEPA podcast. It's great to have you.
Let me say one other thing in terms of the broad coalition that the people of Ukraine have developed, and people like yourself try to continue to daily, educate and provide the information necessary to maintain and to expand that support. If I've had any modicum of success, I like to say that I came from a line of strong women, my two grandmothers and my mom and my sister. And it's not just the brave soldiers of every element of Ukrainian society, but a lot of strong women, a lot of younger women that are the new generation, along with these amazing people that are involved in development of drones and high tech, young men and women who care about their country, and they inspire me. And so therefore you inspire me. Keep up your good work. Keep up your podcast. Stay with it. It's important.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. This is part of a special series that we do on the CEPA podcast, so members of the U.S. Congress. So really appreciate you being our special guest today. And with that, we'll see you next time, either in California or in the halls of the Capitol.
You got it. Thank you very much, and stay with it. You're making a difference.
Thank you, Jim. Well, so are you, but I think we know that.
If you enjoyed listening, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. And to dive deeper into the issues shaping transatlantic policy, visit CEPA.org, where you'll find more expert analysis and research. And don't forget, you can find us all across social media for the latest updates, thought leadership, and exclusive content. Thanks for listening.